All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Shelby Young. I am super excited to have you all here tonight, but mostly I am just really excited to meet some of the really awesome panelists more in depth than I have before here for this town hall. I'm an organizer for Equality Arizona and a local nonprofit here in Arizona with the mission to build a strong and resilient LGBTQIA plus social movement and culture in Arizona by increasing access to safety, well-being, and inclusion in society. This is a town hall focused on the trends and outcomes of the recent legislative session. It's also an opportunity to learn across marginalized and vulnerable communities in Arizona as well. So this town hall is really a moment to get insight into what leaders of these communities are doing to combat these really hard legislative challenges, but also will give you some insight on how we prepare for those as well in the next coming legislative session. So today we're having a conversation with three very special panelists. Okay, it's gonna be really fun. So we're having a conversation with, particularly first, I'll start off with Anaya Braithwaite. Anaya is the External Affairs Associate for Planned Parenthood Arizona, who has dedicated her career to the advancement of Black people through advocacy, policy, and legalism. She's learned how to assist the public for the greater good by maximizing all resources economically and pushing for practices that to promote diversity and inclusivity. Anaya, could you just say hello to all the folks on the call? And that's it.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Next, we actually have Paulette Zinzun from Progress Arizona. She is the Voting Rights Coalition Coordinator with Progress Arizona. She's been engaged in Arizona's political landscape since 2017 with a wealth of experience ranging between the city, state, and federal levels of the government, in addition to her background in advocacy and community organizing. As an alumni from the Arizona Senate Page Program, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, and as a constituent services intern for the city of Phoenix, tons of stuff, she has radiated a passion for serving her community through her career. Paulette, could you also say hi to the folks on the call?
Yes, thank you so much to the Equality Arizona team and for everyone that's watching tonight. I'm excited to talk more about these issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, we have our very own Jean Woodbury. Jean is the Policy and Communications Director at Equality Arizona, where she develops policy analysis and education for policymakers and the public. She also directs the organization's communication strategies, coordinates the organization's press and media relationships, and more. She does everything. So, Jean, would you say hi as well?
Yes, hi. I was muted, but yes, hello. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Jean. Thank you so much. Okay, so just for your understanding, the goal of this event here today is, well, three things. I thought that I was very creative with this, so I'm going to share it, but it's like the three, I made it into like 3 L's. So the first one is learn. We're here to learn from experts on how recent legislation affects Arizona's most vulnerable communities. Second, we're going to leave with the knowledge to fight back against these policies. And last but not least, we hope to lead these movements with some of the organizations on this call. Yeah, that was really creative. So I hope that I get 5 stars for that one. That was good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to get right into the conversation because we should just start talking about it. So my first question actually is for Anaya. Anaya, if you don't mind, can you say a little bit more about SB 1164 or Senate Bill 1164, and what does this mean for communities in Arizona?
Yes. So SB 1164 prohibits abortions after 15 weeks. Healthcare professionals who perform any abortion after 15 weeks can also lose their medical license or face imprisonment. Enacting this abortion ban will disproportionately affect communities of lower income, communities of color, immigrants, and those who already face the biggest barriers to care due to systemic racism and discrimination. And also last week, the draft of the SCOTUS opinion leaked, indicating that the court will overturn Roe. And while this decision is not final, it does confirm the direction that the court is leading. And as we await the final decision from what the Supreme Court decides regarding Roe, we must not lose hope. Banning abortions will not stop abortions from happening. However, we must continue to advocate for bodily autonomy and reproductive justice.
Absolutely. Now that you've also mentioned Roe versus Wade, I want to talk about that too, and I can ask you in just a minute. My next question really is for Paulette as well. I was wondering if Paulette, could you talk a little bit more about House Bill 2492, the specific voter suppression bill that passed in the legislature this year, and what communities that you serve particularly will actually be affected by this policy?
For sure, thank you. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because we are seeing attacks from all angles. And I really appreciate that you're shedding light on the different bills that the GOP-led legislature has been passing to block our rights. So as mentioned, House Bill 2492, which was a bill sponsored by Jake Hoffman, has been signed into law. This bill does a variety of things, but the most concerning is that it blocks federal-only voters from voting for president or using an early ballot. This violates federal law, and in fact, because the bill requires county recorders to block federal-only voters from voting for president, the bill forces county recorders to violate federal law. This component of the bill is likely to be litigated, but for now, this is what it does. It also requires that Arizonans who do not have a driver's license or state ID, they must provide documentation that proves where they live before they can register to vote. This bill is making it harder to register to vote, and registering to vote should be easy. Voters who lack a driver's license or state ID register by providing a copy of their birth certificate, naturalization certificate, or a passport. However, this bill now requires that those people provide an additional document proving their residency, such as like a utility bill, for example. This will impose significant new burdens on Native American voters without traditional addresses recognized by the U.S. Postal Service, voters experiencing poverty or homelessness who lack a state ID, voters who do not drive, and student voters from other states who have enrolled in Arizona colleges, among others.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the details about that. I've always wondered, it's already incredibly difficult to register as someone who is on a reservation. You don't have really an address. Right. And those little boxes they had at the bottom of the voter registration forms, I've never understood those to draw a map. I'm like, what? Who's going to pick that map? Who's going to draw that out? Not the point. But yes. I've always thought that was very crazy. So they've absolutely made it, I'm sure, a lot harder. Well, they did. My next question is for Jean. Jean, if you could share a little bit more about some of the bills that have come into the legislature that affect our LGBTQIA plus folk, and what exactly do these new laws do or change for our marginalized communities in Arizona?
Yeah, I really like that question. What do these actually change? What do these do? Because with a bill like Senate Bill 1165, what it does and what it changes is not necessarily how the bill sponsors try to portray these bills. So with Senate Bill 1165, this is a bill that bans trans girls from competing in girls' sports in K through 12 and college. And what they'd like you to think is that there's some kind of major problem with trans inclusion in sports, and this will change that. But that's not the case. There's actually very few trans girls who even participate in sports in schools in Arizona. And this does change that. So that's one of the main impacts, is that for those handful of girls, there's now an entire state law just to exclude them from sports. So that's the thing we have to keep in mind the most. But what it really does in terms of a larger scale change is that now we have a situation in school sports where people have to concern themselves with, am I going to be accused of not counting as my gender in sports? And this is something that's going to affect many, many cis girls who are maybe gender nonconforming. So similarly with a bill like Senate Bill 1138, which is designed as a way to limit access to transition care for minors. Doug Ducey, when he signed it into law, mentioned, well, this bill is just about surgeries, irreversible surgeries, and these are an adult decision. And so what I'm changing is that now no kid will feel pressured into making an adult decision before they're ready. Well, that's not going to change anything. That's already the case. That's not happening. But what it does do, and what it does change, is now, again, we have a state law that says to, again, a very small group of trans kids, because we are a very small minority, it says, we don't think you should have options. We don't think you should be able to exercise agency over your life as a trans individual.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you already just starting off with, it's such a small community that you're targeting from jump. I think I read something where it's like 0.5% of our population in Arizona identifies as trans women. So it's definitely a deliberate attack. Well, back to Anaya and the 15-week abortion ban. In light of recent events, and just like you said, you mentioned the Supreme Court opinion on the landmark law of Roe versus Wade. What power does a state, if that bill was, I guess, to be changed, and Roe versus Wade was not a part of our actual legislation, what power does the state now have over abortion rights? Where could Arizona particularly be headed as well?
Yes, so if the Supreme Court decides to overturn Roe v. Wade, states like Mississippi, Texas, and now Arizona could continue to introduce bills to further restrict abortion healthcare access or completely ban abortion altogether. Arizona, if not flipped in the upcoming election, if we decide, not even if we decide, if another person like Governor Ducey or the legislators that introduced the 15-week bill have that power again going into the next year, we can be headed in the direction of downright banning abortion care altogether. And on top of that, different organizations like Planned Parenthood Arizona has joined together to continue to place focus on the care of its patients. We're going to continue to aim to offer quality service for every person, regardless of gender, race, economic income, or other challenging things that people have to overcome. And we are really trying to identify how we can best assist patients once this bill 1164 goes into law in September. And also to challenge its passing, we are focusing on educating supporters of their rights. A lot of people are saying, what can I do to get an abortion? How can I ensure that my rights are protected? So we're really trying to focus on how to educate the masses and find different ways that we can get people's access to abortions through abortion funds, or partnering with different organizations outside of Arizona, such as Heaven states like California, where abortion care is offered after 15 weeks.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us some more insight about what could happen, what could possibly go down in Arizona. Back to voter suppression. I know it's a whirlwind. It's a lot going on. So similar to what I just asked Anaya, what obstacles can we expect resulting from House Bill 2492, especially in upcoming elections in Arizona. Where is Progress Arizona spending most of its time as it prepares for November? What are y'all doing, I guess, too?
Yeah, so again, it would place a burden on Native American voters without traditional addresses that are recognized by the U.S. Postal Services, those who do not have a state ID or driver's license, and student voters, among others. All Arizona voters must affirm that they are U.S. citizens on a registration form, but no state requires that millions of existing registered voters prove their citizenship. Arizona is the only state in the nation with a documentary proof of citizenship requirement currently in force. So imagine how many of Arizona's 4.35 million registered voters would be immediately forced off the voter rolls or given just 30 days to provide proof of their citizenship, such as a birth or naturalization certificate. And since most of the electorate lives in Maricopa and Pima counties, that means just 2 county recorders will have to process all of those millions of copies of evidence of US citizenship. However, this bill will not go into effect until January 2023, so it won't have an effect this election cycle. In the meantime, though, Progress Arizona will be using digital ads, influencers, and media to support One Arizona's efforts to get people registered to vote. We will be holding politicians accountable through tools like our Progress Arizona scorecard. We will be doing press outreach and digital organizing. We will make sure that people know about the choices that they face in the August primary and the November general elections, and that they're ready to vote for leaders who will defend our democracy and not tear it down at all levels of the ballot.
Wow. I would love to know more about this report card or the point card. I would love to know more about that. Yes. But that's since I didn't even think about the effect this would have on the county recorders and the thousands of forms that they would have to process. I did not consider that at all. So that's going to be a lot of work on their shoulders. And I just don't think that's something they need to carry. Good, great. Awesome. Well, moving back to Jean. So how is the LGBTQIA plus community responding to all of these lost opportunities that these new bills bring? And where is Equality Arizona looking to help fill that hole or that absence?
Yeah, and I think, if we're talking about the LGBTQ community broadly, then it's worth looking at what's happening in other states right now. So I liked I think you said lost opportunities. I like that way of talking about it. So this is about removing options for people, the same way that a bill like 1164 is about removing options for people. And in many states around the country, we're seeing far worse versions of the laws we've seen in Arizona, in Louisiana, in Florida, in so many states, we're seeing very strict bans on talking about transition, on talking about your own identity, on all transition care, which fortunately did not end up being the case in Arizona. But we did have that bill originally that would have criminalized transition care. And so thinking of it that way and looking at what's happening around the country, I think that it's almost awful to ask, what is the LGBTQ community doing to respond to that, right? Well, what we're doing to respond to it is we're kind of suffering. But there is a lot of resilience and there is a lot of resistance. Something that I think is great that Equality Arizona is doing is this new program called Queer People Fit, which is just kind of a nice way to get out and get moving. And I think it's a nice kind of answer to a lot of what we're seeing in terms of bans and specifically the sports bans.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you. Absolutely. What are queer people doing in order to fight back, living, existing? It's ridiculous. Well, before I go to the final question, which is kind of the same for all the panelists here, we had 2 questions from attendees before this town hall, and I wanted to ask them out to you. This first one is really for Jean, I believe, and feel free for anyone to chime in. This one is from Hannah Lichenwalter. And they say the Arizona government recently created some new anti-trans laws, which is what we talked about today. Is petitioning the often hostile legislators the best use of our time and effort, considering the disproportionately high rates of homelessness and violence that trans people face? Should we redirect our efforts to building material gains outside of the government? And for specific examples, Hannah brings up the Star House that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera found in the 1970s, a safe home for LGBTQIA plus folk. Jean or anyone on the panelists board today, what do you think?
I'll jump in. We've got a little bit of an echo. So, but I think that this is a really interesting way to look at it. And to answer the first question, is it worth our resources to spend time lobbying with people who are potentially very hostile in state legislatures? The answer is yes, it is worth our time. That doesn't mean other approaches and strategies that this person brings up aren't worth our time, but this is worth our time. The reason that Arizona didn't see a complete ban on transition care for minors is because of time spent, not just this year, but over several years, lobbying legislators to shift their position on these issues. That change does happen, and it can happen, and it's absolutely effective. So I would say that. What I would say in response to the idea of building material gains to answer some of these material problems, like homelessness, is that the capital required to answer something like that is just very large. And there are some policy solutions that can make that happen in a way that would be very, very difficult to, I think, kind of force with your own resources. So again, I think that, you know, working from a policy standpoint is necessary alongside all of these other kinds of approaches to meeting the basic material needs of trans people.
Thank you. Absolutely, I also agree with you as well. We had another question from another attendee named Sarah Bims. And Sarah asked a more broad question for everyone here. So anyone feel free to chime in. They ask, how can we be more proactive in stopping these kind of, in their words, what they said was crazy backwards. I didn't say that, but Sarah did, okay? How can we be more proactive in stopping this kind of crazy backwards legislation during the actual legislative session, so we're not dealing with the consequences after? You know, I also think too of sometimes some of the action alerts that Jean would make with Equality Arizona, letting people know what's happening in the legislature right when it happens. Does anyone else have any ideas of actually how to be more proactive as someone who's outside the legislature like myself and knowing what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, go right ahead.
Thank you. So I think it starts with spreading the word with those closest to you, to your family members, your parents, your cousins, then going to your circle of friends. And that's the best way to get people to start talking about the issues that matter the most and get them involved, because a lot of people are not familiar with the legislature and what they're trying to do there. So it's almost like when I share it with my cousins, for example, they'll be like, damn, that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, and it's been happening and it's going to continue happening. So we need to get everyone involved and on our side. I think that, for example, for us, for Progress Arizona, along with other partners like the Arizona Democracy Resource Center, Fuerte, All Voting is Local, we work together to fight against the attacks on our democracy, but we can't do it without the support from the community. And the power of telling your story and how certain legislation impacts you or your family allows us to continue defending our rights and your rights. Policy is a big component here, and sometimes it's getting into the nitty-gritty when it comes to the policy that they're trying to pass. But building power within communities is super powerful, and something that I think is where we should put our energy and be more proactive into building that power with those most impacted.
You took everything I was going to say and said it so much better. So I was going to focus on community, but if we even backtrack a little bit before then, I do believe that elections are very important because we are putting them in office, and those people that are in office are the ones that are introducing these bills, which are now turning into laws. So for organizations such as Planned Parenthood and those on the call today, I believe that we are really working hard to educate our communities on the importance of elections and showing them exactly what democracy is, how can we put the power back into the hands of the people and continue to uplift our voices, because people are taking advantage of our lack of knowing and not everyone's ability to have access to information in the legislature. So if we, one, do continue to pass along the information within our communities, but then also get out and vote in November, I believe that we could truly make monumental change so that we could stay ahead of the introduction of bills such as the ones passed this recent session.
Yeah. And I think both are incredibly important. The community between organizations, but also the community in our community, I guess, in our circle, and keeping them up to date with what's going on. So thank you both for those answers. It was awesome. My final question for our awesome panelists that are on the call today is really just how can now community members support you and the work that you do? So I'll actually ask Paulette first for Progress Arizona. How can audience members join Progress Arizona's efforts on voting rights?
Yeah, awesome question. First off, join our newsletter where we share the latest news. So visit progressarizona.org and you can check out all of the amazing work that our org has been doing to hold elected officials accountable and to defend democracy. And keep up with us on our socials on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram at Progress Arizona, where we also update y'all on stuff that's happening, not only related to voting rights, and then get involved with our grassroots partners like Living United for Change, or Lucha, Fuerte, Arizona Democracy Resource Center. We have so many great partners that have events in person and virtually, and we always like to collaborate with them and love to see people turn out to the events that help protect our democracy.
Love it. If you didn't see, Jean put the link to Progress Arizona in the chat. Please go check them out. I really like the colors that you have for Progress Arizona. I really like the colors. They're very cute. Just a side thing, just a side comment. Well, what about Jean? I know I work with you, Jean, so I know the answer to this too. But how can community members on this call, audience members, how can they support Equality Arizona's work?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. I would recommend checking out our events page, equalityarizona.org/events, for a lot of different ways to get involved. We have lots of different volunteer opportunities for different kinds of interests. You don't necessarily have to be making calls to help us out, because I know a lot of people have phone anxiety. Count myself among them. And I think something else that's great, I'm going to steal the follow our newsletter recommendation. So actually go to equalityarizona.substack.com. You can subscribe as an email newsletter, or with an RSS feed, or you can actually subscribe as a podcast. So yeah, that's how I'm going to sum that up.
On a personal note, I actually had no idea that you could sign up for a podcast. And I was using my podcast, Apple podcast thing last night. And then all of a sudden I looked and I saw, Jean, your voice started playing first in my car. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? But it was the podcast. It's actually super cool. The fact that you can listen to it on a podcast. I think it's great. So yes, listserv, Progress Arizona, Equality Arizona. Last but not least, Anaya. Anaya, how can we support you and Planned Parenthood in the work that you'll be doing this year and forever, hopefully?
Yes, so to support Planned Parenthood Arizona's work on reproductive rights, we are asking community members to first continue their public acts such as marches, rallies, and protests. Also, we are really stressing the importance of getting out to vote. The upcoming election is our opportunity to elect champions of reproductive health, rights, and justice. It will give us a chance to flip the state's legislature and elect those true champions that believe in our rights and abortion, healthcare, and et cetera. And then also it'll help to eliminate bills such as SB 1164 and stop them from becoming a law. We are also encouraging for you all to talk to your friends, your family, colleagues, et cetera, about the state of abortion access in Arizona and across the country so that they can get involved. And finally, you can come to us for care. We offer a wide range of sexual and reproductive healthcare services in our 7 healthcares and through telehealth. And no matter what happens in the state or with the Supreme Court, we will continue to serve you and provide the best care that we possibly can. And I'm going to steal what everybody else said. Go to our website and definitely get involved and sign up for our newsletter. You can also sign up to become a volunteer. We need you all so much. And being in our newsletter will definitely assist us with continuing to keep in contact with you. And as we have updates, we always share them. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anaya. Well, that's all the questions I have today. I don't see any questions in the chat from other people. I did see a mention of a protest in Tucson. Okay, at Armory Park. Been there. It's great. Good time. That could be something for someone to do. But for now, right here, I don't have any other questions for you all. I think we've left with maybe the 3 L's. I hope that you've learned a lot from the people who are the panelists here today on legislation and how it affects our most vulnerable communities. I would hope that you leave now with the knowledge on how to fight back against these policies by leading the movements with us and joining Paulette, Anaya, and Jean in the work that they do all year round. You all are awesome community organizers, awesome people, and awesome friends. I hope now, who knows? Maybe we'll be friends, who knows? I don't know. But thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone who's shown up. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I hope everyone has a great rest of your night. And yes, we'll post the details on our social media.